Hey there, Skullheads. I'm Snags.
And I'm old Silky.
And tonight we're going to be worshiping at the altar of the mighty Judas Priest. If you don't like Judas Priest, fuck off and never listen to our podcast ever again. Before you do that, though, before you fuck off, go to snagsandsilky.com and buy all the merch on there. Buy our book that we wrote. And, there's an email address on there. Email us and tell us we'll tell you how to wire us millions of dollars as well.
Snagsandsilky.com.
Yeah.
So
Silky's going to take it away. Before we do that, we want to introduce our guest, Mr. Clean, another Judas Priest expert. I'm kind of representing the casual, conventional Judas Priest fan on this podcast. Old Silky and Mr. Clean are fucking Judas Priest maniacs.
Well, Snags, you were there all the way back, so you probably know more than you.
I'm just saying, though. I mean, I'm bragging about the expertise we got on this podcast. Sure. These cats have read every Judas Priest book. They listen to every new Judas Priest album, and it's going to make for a great episode.
I would say they're still relevant today. The 3 new songs off the newest release is just as, you hear it and it's the brand. Like I've said in other episodes, it's not some watered down, what the hell is that? It's Priest right away. It's good stuff. But
no, Richie Faulkner is a bad dude right there on the guitar.
Yeah, I actually saw Richie when he was with Lauren Harris. Steve Harris's daughter opened for Iron Maiden. So you can
that's cool.
Yell nepotism and all that, but if that's the right word, I believe it is.
So he was a guitar player for Steve Harris's daughter before he got the Judas.
Yes, and in that band, it's very interesting. While I watched that band suffered, let's just say suffered through it because Maiden was about to come on.
Her and Wolfgang Van Halen need to do a tour together.
Well, Wolfie's got some,
his music sucks though.
Anyway, the whole time her band was playing, I'm looking at Richie Faulkner like he's in the wrong band because he's got the stance, he's throwing his hair around, he's playing up and back and
shredding that guitar.
And it was, it's like some soft song, but I'm like, old boy got his foot in the door, but he's not in the right band. And then when he pops up in Priest, when Tipton retired in 2018, I was like, wow, he's found his.
I thought he was going to replace KK Downing.
Oh, you're right. He did. Yeah. Andy Sneap came in. I apologize. You're right.
Yeah. So you heard the story about how Richie Faulkner found out he got the gig?
I'll know it when you tell it. This is good that you're weighing in on something. He
got an email from Judas Priest, right? But he was a fan. He was already on their mailing list, and he just assumed it was an e-blast, and he fucking deletes it. And they call him like a couple days later. They're like, "Did you get our email?" And he's, "What? Who? This is Judas Priest." And he's like, "Holy crap!" And he looks in his trash, and it's the audition for our band email.
Tim Ripper Owens thought his friends were fucking with him.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
Hung up on, Yeah. So let's get started. I want to quote Anthrax has a song called Safe Home. It's about having that one thing that gives you purpose or the confidence to keep going. The lyrics are, from out of nowhere, you came strong as stone, and now I'll never have to be alone. What it is I know, you have always been my safe home. I walk, I run, I burn out into you. Those lyrics really encapsulate how this whole scene is passing. Bands that were our whole world are gone. Rush, Slayer, Motorhead, the Ramones, just to name a few. we were the kids from Bad News Bears, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Over the Edge, and Dazed and Confused. That's who we were growing up in the 70s. I wanted to ask you guys, did you guys have a defining moment when metal entered your lives? Was there one specific incident or song or person that kind of pulled you into the fold? Or do you consider yourself a full-on metalhead? I mean, I listen to almost every kind of style, but I you know where your roots are. You know, I go back to.
For me, it was when I was like, God, I must have been like 8, 9 years old in summer camp. All these kids are talking about this band called Kiss, and I, the idea of a band being named an object, like not like the Beatles, like a group. I had to modify the name because I couldn't get my head around a band called Kiss, so I called them the Kiss Gang. And I told my mom, I was like, oh, I want to get an album by the Kiss Gang. Nice. And so we go to Peaches Records, which was this record store in Atlanta back in the day.
Yeah, and, in Buckhead.
Yeah, a Peachtree Battle had to was before Turtles opened up. And you walking into Peaches, and they've got their little sidewalk Hall of Fame outside, and they had people's handprints and footprints in there, famous people, probably the Doobie Brothers, and I'm guessing Skinner and Allman Brothers. And they had Kiss's footprints, and Kiss's footprints were different from everybody else. They had the big platform boots. And we go in, and I wanted the cassette that had Rock and Roll All Night on it. So the record store clerk said, oh, that's Dress to Kill. So I bought Dress to Kill and started listening to that. And that was it. Yeah, that was my point of entry.
Defining moment.
Yeah.
What about you, Mr. Clean?
Yeah. So for me, growing up in Atlanta, we had, still it was like Z93 and 96 Rock.
Yeah.
And they didn't play, a lot of different variety of, pretty predictable what they were always going to play. Lots of Leonard Skinner, the standard AC/DC. You never get too many deep cuts about anything. You rarely hear anything Judas Priest at all or Iron Maiden. So, but probably, I had my jam box and I would just listen to, the radio, and I would wait for songs to come on, and I would record it. If I thought it was a cool song, I'd record it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would make these compilation tapes. And probably when I realized I was a metalhead was, recording Black Sabbath, several different songs, Paranoid they would play that on the radio. And so I would have that, and heard the Mob Rules. And so I listened to those tapes, those compilation tapes so many times that even today, when one of those songs comes on,
you think of
my brain thinks about the next song that was on my compilation tape.
I do the same thing.
Led Zeppelin's coming on right after this one, and it's like, yeah. But
I do the same thing with I'm trying to think. It's usually something from Van Halen 2, and then that went into either Accepts, Balls to the Wall. It's something when they were close together on the tapes that I made, but because I would listen to like Bob Coburn's Metal Shop on Friday nights. That went from like 10 to midnight. But for me, it was that Lonely Church Bell in the song Black Sabbath. At a really young age, because I would pour through my mom's record collection, and I will weigh in. I will say one thing that I think pulls a lot of metalheads together is I think we all came from dysfunctional families. Not to say everyone who likes heavy metal doesn't have mom and dad in the house, but I know Snags and I both came from.
We were raised out in the wild by wolves. I mean,
yeah, we were pretty much raised by wolves. it was not strange to have nothing in the refrigerator and maybe you ate an entire bag of Doritos.
Well, Mr. Clean grew up in the suburbs, but
Well, I grew up in Dunwoody when we still had when Vermac Road was a dirt road, and that goes right by Dunwoody High School.
there was like cows and stuff out there, right?
So
Yeah.
yeah, there was no
Fields and
perimeter
stuff.
mall.
Yeah.
All those woods where I played. We'd run around in Mr. Sproul's fields. That's where perimeter mall is
Yeah.
now.
Wow.
I mean, it was.
Hey.
We were the rednecks. We were the rednecks of Dunwoody.
So
and then all the
have you ever
IBM and Xerox people moved in.
Tell
Have
the
you
story about. I want to ask Mr. Clean real
Yeah.
quick. Tell the story about your soccer team when you drove into the game blasting Van Halen out of the bus.
Yeah, so our bus driver was Charlie, and he had his bus decked out with like 8 speakers running down each inside, and Charlie would always drive the soccer team to the stadium. We played, varsity soccer over at North DeKalb Stadium, and freaking Charlie would drive right through the gates and drive out on the track and do a lap around the track in the school bus with us just jamming with Van Halen as loud as we could. And back then, you knew every Van Halen song.
Sure, that's great.
It was just, it was awesome. Just incredible. So,
That's
that
cool.
was a lot of fun, and we were good too. So when we came in,
You
the
made it.
other team was going to get we only lose like one game a year, and
Great.
so we were pretty cocky. But that was some good days right there. Probably
Yeah,
couldn't do that these days.
If you've ever seen Over the Edge, those kids were moved out to the suburbs, and the bigwigs did not make allowances for the kids to have anything to plug into, and they got bored and turned to tearing shit up. And,
that's a movie from like the late 70s. Is Matt Dillon?
79.
Yeah, Matt Dillon's first
so
movie.
good.
What's it called?
Over the Edge.
Over the Edge. It's on. You
I
can
didn't
find
see
it
it.
on. Yeah, find it on YouTube and Amazon Prime.
It's about to be reissued finally after having been out of print forever. It's got a tremendous soundtrack.
Huh.
Yeah, the soundtrack is awesome, and there's kids wearing Aerosmith shirts. It's. You ever watched the movie Dazed and Confused? This is the real Dazed and Confused, actually in the 70s.
Yeah.
But in the end, the kids go berserk and tear the town up, which is
but it was kind of based on an actual occurrence, which just gave the movie a little weight. But for me, you look back, it's Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Bad News Bears, Over the Edge, and Dazed and Confused. Really, anyone who wants to know what it was like while this music was coming up, that's really what it was like. So I mentioned Sabbath's song Black Sabbath. And for me, once I'd heard Deep Purple's Hush and Space Truckin', Iron Maiden, Prowler, and Judas Priest Delivering the Goods, I think that was my first Priest song. And I was just completely hooked. I was reborn to the metal. Praise Lemmy.
Praise Lemmy.
But so I want to get into kind of the starting of Priest here. They were formed in Birmingham in 1969. And at that point, it would have been KK Downing. Al Atkins replaced a singer. They had Alan Moore. Some other people that were in the beginning was Simon Phillips, John Hinch, Les Binks. Dave Holland would be their classic lineup drummer.
Simon Phillips was an incredible drummer, though.
Yeah. I think he went on to some other bands too. Yeah. But so they, like I said, they were formed in '69. Al Atkins and Brian Bruno Stappenhill, with John Perry on guitar and John Partridge on drums. And Perry committed.
One of them was like some black dude with an afro, right?
That would have been the John Perry on guitar.
Yeah. They really looked like a hippie band.
Yeah, a very, very odd grouping of people. but Perry commits suicide at the age of 18. And then the replacements the band auditioned was KK Downing. So he comes in, he auditions. At the time, they turn him down in favor of 17-year-old multi-instrumentalist Ernest Chataway, who'd played with the Birmingham band Black Sabbath when they were still called Earth. So that was I did not know that here Sabbath and Priest are kind of blending right at the beginning. Stappen Hill came up with the name Judas Priest from Bob Dylan's song "The Ballad of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest," which is on the John Wesley Harding album, great Dylan album. So Partridge is replaced in 1970 by Fred Woolley, the drummer, and then later rejoined Chataway and Stappen Hill in a band called Bullion. No member of that early lineup lasted long enough to play on the band's recordings. Several songs were co-written by Al Atkins, which appeared on the first two records. The band
Al Atkins is one of those guys. He's like, I was the original singer for Judas Priest. It's like, can I get
Give me some
large
more fries?
Yeah.
Now Al Atkins has some CDs, one of which he does a bunch of Priest songs.
I'm sure.
And so you can find Holy Man was a big one. And Caviar and Meths was originally a 10-minute song that had lyrics. And it was truncated down to a 2-minute instrumental on Rock-a-Rolla.
Which is bullshit, because that should have been like a 10-minute song. That's a bad 2-minute strumming right there.
It just sucks that you go to that box set that had all this stuff. Whoever bought it spent a lot of money, and there's one disc at the very end that's called Beyond Live and Rare, and it's got one demo of Epitaph, which I believe is on Sad Wings of Destiny. And then 23 live songs from 11 dates. They've already given you 8 unreleased concerts in the box set, but then the bonus disc that's all rare and sought after, 23 more live songs of songs that are on those 8 live albums, just duplicate. But then they give you Mother Son, which came out is recorded at a fair October of 75. So that was a huge, and it's a really long kind of trippy dippy song. Halford singing.
I never heard that.
There's 2 versions, the one from this box set, but there's also another version of it floating around on YouTube.
I'm gonna find that.
So that's a good song, but the misses for this massive box set that's called 50 Heavy Metal Years of Music, they could have put some early demos from those first 2 records, that 10-minute Caviar and Mess that I mentioned with lyrics, the Freewheel Burnin' 12-inch single version. That I don't know if you know about that. There was a 12-inch single EP that Freewheel Burnin' has about a 2-minute guitar noodle before Freewheel Burning starts, and that version is only on that 12-inch thing. I found it for about $4 because somebody had told me about it, and I found it on eBay. And now as people hear about it, I've seen it go up in price. So, but that's out there. You can still get that. But there's also a UK version of Rock-a-Rolla, which had a stanza before, like when the song starts, it's right at the chorus. But there was a stanza further down in the song that's now up first. So it adds another 2 minutes to the song. And I think it was their original vision of the song. What I think happened is when it got over to America, somebody started the tape late or something. I don't think they purposely cut that bit of the song off. So that could have been put in there, and some of Ripper Owens' demos would have been interesting, because I know he sang a few Halford songs to them, and Downing swore up and down he couldn't tell the difference. He's never sounded. He's
I'm
never
sure
sounded that.
I have no doubt that Glenn Tipton's going to listen to this episode, and when he
Right.
hears all of your suggestions, he's going to make that happen tomorrow.
This is, you could easily put this stuff out with some extras. I mean, people would buy it, is all I'm saying. But so let's go back. I want to say that Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song 1970, I have nothing to base this on other than my own travels in music and experience, but the opening wailing of the Immigrant Song, Halford does say Robert Plant was a huge influence. I just think
I'm thinking Ian Gillan had to be
Immigrant
too.
Song and Child in Time, Ian Gillan. I think those, Child in Time, Immigrant Song, and Tony Iommi's guitar solidified the foundation for everything else. That vocally, those two singers, Ian Gillan, Robert Plant, really laid it down for future singers, i.e. Rob Halford.
I agree with all that, but I also think that Priest contributed something, a lot of original stuff, and one of the things almost laid down the prototype for speed metal, because a lot of their songs, in contrast to Black Sabbath, you hear them and you immediately imagine yourself flying down the highway in a car just because of the way they truck.
They grew up amidst the ruins of World War II, and the factories, the pounding of these factories, steelworks, really influenced and shaped Sabbath and Priest to become the founders of that genre.
I read one of those, I think KK Downing's book. He talks about sitting there in class and you hear the foundry over there, like bam, bam, just like metal on metal, just all day. That's what you're hearing while you're there in school.
That book is Heavy Duty.
That's right.
What is it? Where is it? Heavy Duty Days and Nights in Judas Priest.
Can I loan you that?
Really
Thanks.
good book.
I actually have that on the shelf about 10 feet away from me, and I will get around to reading it at some point.
It is good.
Mr. Clean
he grew up with a pretty abusive father. And I think that shaped almost the reason he gets into Priest. It's his band. Everyone else in Priest comes in after him, and he quickly loses control, much like your Brian Jones. We talked about that in the last episode. These guys that felt they were the band and quickly lost.
That wasn't the last episode, but that was one of our recent episodes. Where you got one guy that starts the band. You have it with the Allman Brothers. You got it with Pink Floyd. You got it with Priest in this case. But you got some one or two people that start the band, get it going. It's their band. And then some other people. Fleetwood Mac is another example, unfortunately. The early version of Fleetwood Mac kicked ass. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, because Priest did an amazing cover of one of their songs. But then a different lineup comes in and actually makes the band even bigger,
So the band records a 2-song demo, Good Time Woman and We'll Stay Together. Eventually gained a 3-album recording contract with the label Immediate, which all your Yardbird, Jimmy Page, was all through Immediate. So that this would have been a big deal for them. Like, oh my God, we're on Immediate. And in late '69, and they do a gig, and then the label goes out of business before an album could even be recorded. So the band splits in 1970. That's why all these people left. But later that year, Atkins gets a band together called Freight, and they're rehearsing without a singer, made up of KK Downing, Ian Hill, which was dating Rob Halford's older sister. So now you got Downing and Hill and this drummer John Ellis, and they get John Atkins, and they bring up the Judas Priest name, and they play their first gig March 6th of 71. Ellis quits later that year and is replaced with Alan Moore, who I did have him listed in the beginnings here. They do some early shows covering Hendrix and a band called Quartermass. And then in 72, their set list would have Never Satisfied, Winner. They would close the show with Caviar and Meths. So here again, this was their anchor song, this 10-minute jam, and they cut it, which is just so absurd.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But they made a 45 demo, a song called Mind Conception with Holy is the Man. Now, Holy is the Man is the song that I told you Al Atkins recorded in the 90s, but what I read, what hipped me to the whole album was that he really wanted to have people hear how these songs were. So that album is a fairly decent, I'm told, representation of what that Al Atkins Priest sounded like. So those songs that I mentioned, those could all be in some early years thing, but it's just hasn't been done. Then Alan Moore leaves, replaced with Chris Campbell. And then the band joins the management of Sabbath and Iommi Management Agency. So Tony is like right there at the beginning with Judas Priest. Atkins is writing all this material, including Whiskey Woman, which would become Victim of Changes. But they were just weighted down financially. They could not get anything together. So Atkins leaves, Campbell leaves, and then this band Hiroshima, John Hinch and Rob Halford, they kind of come over to the Priest side, Ian Hill's girlfriend, Rob Halford's sister, and they play their first show as Judas Priest May of 73. And now the notes I see here, the show was recorded and part of it released in 2019 on some compilation called Downer Rock Asylum. I can't find it. It lists here, but I have no idea what that is or where it is. So, but it had one live song from the Atkins era. That would be cool to hear. So their first tour is through Europe in early 74. They played with Budgie. There's actually a recording of Budgie and Priest together. They're covering a Budgie tune that I had it here.
So just so our listeners know, Silky made 7 pages of notes.
Yeah, but it's, I forget what song it was. But it's a Budgie tune.
Wasn't that Budgie?
Anybody into Budgie would.
What were you gonna say, Mr. Clean?
I think wasn't Budgie part of that Iommi management group also.
The Roger Bain produced Budgie and the first 3 Sabbath albums.
That's some good times back then, man. Can you imagine being there when they were recording that stuff?
I can't. It would have been.
And they do it in like 2 weeks. They'll record an album in like 2 weeks for like 1,000 pounds.
Yeah. And they're on to the next
amazing album. And then, freaking Taylor
it's
Swift.
Like the Ramones album took like 30 hours,
Yeah.
But so they they record that. It was Running From My Soul was the Budgie song, which is on I think Never Turn Your Back on a Friend or Squawk, one of those first early Budgie albums. So that gets you up to them recording that first album, Rockarola. Priest has recorded 19 studio albums from 1974. This March 8th coming up, Invincible Shield their 19th studio album will come out. 3 songs are really good. They have 6 live albums, officially, recognized live albums, and then 6 DVD, either collected videos or concerts. Great stuff. They're coming to you guys May 11th at the Ameris Bank Amphitheater. Coming up.
Who they touring with?
May 11th.
Uriah Heep.
Uriah Heep.
Uriah Heep. Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's
Wow.
so let's all take a moment on that subject. Talk about the first time we saw Judas Priest. So my first and only Judas Priest concert was Defenders of the Faith.
Nice.
At the Omni, and it was fucking amazing. And I cannot remember who opened for them.
I was going to ask you because I saw that same tour in Maryland, and then I saw them in '91 with Motorhead and Dangerous Toys and somebody else.
Yeah, Priest, Motorhead, Dangerous Toys. One of these bands does not belong. Which band is it?
There was a few. There were some other ones too. Somebody else was in there. It was like for Desert Storm or something. So it was like a bunch of bands.
So Mr. Clean, when did you first see Judas Priest?
I was at the same concert you were at in the Omni.
We were at a lot. We discovered we were at a lot of the
opened?
same concerts. Yeah.
I can't remember. I was high as shit.
Snags,
you go to these concerts at the Omni, it would always end up smelling.
Oh
like
yeah, dude.
The
Snags,
Omni,
you
they
could
had
look
that
that
cone.
up.
Remember the ceiling of the Omni had all those like pyramid
Balloons?
shape. All the weed would go up and hang up in those like
Yeah.
the rafters. The rafters. Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
Crazy.
You could look that up, Snags. Take a minute, look at that.
I'll look that up. Also, let's get to. So I don't know. We haven't really mentioned to our millions of fans out there, but and this is going to make them just shit their pants with joy when they hear this. Each one of us have compiled and this was Mr. Clean's idea.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, each one of us has compiled a top 10 list, our top 10 Judas Priest songs. And we're going to be dropping our list throughout the episode. So let me know when you want me to drop mine. Mine's going to probably be the most predictable because I'm not the maniac that these guys are. And then they'll drop theirs as the episode goes along. But while you're talking, I will look up and see if I can find out who opened for Judas Priest. The Fate.
So just running through, they had 19 albums. Ripper Owens sang on 2 studio albums and 2 live albums. Jugulator in 97, 98 Live Meltdown. And the set list for that tour really renewed my interest in Priest because like Halford leaves and you're like, what the fuck, and it was just an interesting time and you just kind of got into other things. And then somehow I caught that Live Meltdown somewhere. It's a double CD and I'm looking at the set list and I'm like, holy shit. Like he purposely wanted them to play some songs they'd never played live,
Here we go. The opening act. Now I remember. And when I mention it, you're going to realize why I forgot. The amazing, and this band is right up there with Judas Priest, AC/DC, Motorhead. I can't believe I forgot that I saw them live. Great White.
Great White. So now I've seen Great White 3 times.
Yeah, there you go. I wouldn't be admitting that live on.
Well, the other one with Kiss, remember they opened for the Revenge tour.
We saw that. Yeah.
Hey, Silky, that Ripper Owens live when he does Diamonds in Rust.
Yeah,
that's as good as it gets.
Yeah, the Jugulator is a great album, and it's not anywhere streaming. I have the CD, but it sucks. Is my Priest playlist? It's like all the albums. That's just been yanked. And I didn't do it.
It's interesting that around the same time, Maiden and Priest both replaced their singers with totally different results. And we've mentioned this before, but Blaze Bayley is the bum note of singers. You know, just terrible, horrible. Why did they get their fat bald uncle to join the band?
Yeah.
And with Ripper Owens, they knocked it out of the park, man. That
Yeah,
guy's
so Halford leaves the band after a huge comeback album, Painkiller. And this same time period, 3 hugely successful bands would lose their iconic singers, Maiden, Priest, and Crew. So Bruce leaves, Blaze Bayley comes in, Priest with Ripper Owens, and Crew with John Corabi. Now, I still say that 1994 Motley Crue self-titled album is one of Aerosmith's best albums. And then Maiden's X Factor is, like you said, somebody's uncle gets a chance to fuck up your favorite band, much like Tony Martin did for
terrible
Sabbath. Thanks,
if you want some comedy, just search Blaze Bayley Iron Maiden live on YouTube and watch as much as you can stand. It's pretty funny. I just got to say, we're 36 minutes in and we have not dropped any of the top 10 lists yet.
No, I just want to finish this up with Ripper Owens and we'll get back to it.
All right.
So I saw Ripper Owens on the Demolition tour with Anthrax, and it was out on Buford Highway, like the International Ballroom, I think.
Yeah, I remember that. I saw Jane's Addiction there.
And it was freezing there. We park and we're walking around. And we're like, where is like, there's nobody, but the show's about to start in like 20 minutes. And we're walking around and I see like some Mexicans and they're clearly not going to a Maiden or a Judas Priest concert. And we walk into the mall, like it's connected to a mall, right? Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's off of
Buford Highway.
Buford Highway in a shopping mall, in the back of a shopping mall.
Yeah, so somebody like, you know, in really bad English is like, oh, you go around. And so we go around and there's everybody. And, you know, we saw Anthrax on a great, they had John Bush singing with them from Armored Saint. Great show. Some standout tracks from both of those Ripper Owens was Bloodstained, One on One, Burn in Hell, Cathedral Spires, which would be the longest Priest song for a long time. It's almost 10 minutes long. Bullet Train, Hell is Home, Jekyll and Hyde, Feed on Me, and then Lost and Found is kind of a real mellow ballad, but Ripper Owens really brings it. Those are just some standout tracks, those 2 studio records, but I did want to mention him because he really gave them another chance when at the time Halford left, they were really like, we're never going to be able to replace this singer, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, with KK Downing on the outs with the band and forming his own band, KK's Priest, you know, Ripper Owens is back in the mix there. He's singing for that band. So,
yeah.
He's back singing Priest songs again. Let me drop my top 10 list, then we can yammer a little more. And we've all got top 10 lists, and we should start dropping them at some point. So, number 10, Victim of Changes off of Sad Wings of Destiny. It's a badass riff. If you listen to those first couple albums, Rock and Roll is good. The song Rock and Roll is good. There's good stuff on it. For me, Sad Wings of Destiny, when Victim of Changes kicks in, it feels like they're really finding their groove. That's just such a badass riff. It's really indicative of things to come. And
I think Rock-a-Rolla is, everyone's got to start somewhere, but I don't think they really had their thing figured out. And you go from Rock-a-Rolla to Sad Wings, and it's like a leap way forward.
Yeah,
Sad Wings has some, to this day, there's a lot of songs off of Sad Wings of Destiny that they still play.
Yeah. Number 9, Green Manalishi off of Killing Machine. And this is just a mean fucking sounding cover of the Peter Green era Fleetwood Mac tune.
Mm-hmm.
If you go on Spotify or YouTube or whatever, you listen to both of those songs back to back. It's one of those rare instances where the cover makes it a totally different song in a better in a positive way. It's better than the original. It's just mean sounding. The lyrics are awesome. It was actually written as one of the last songs that Peter Green wrote before he left Fleetwood Mac, and they turned into a pop music.
That's like when Led Zeppelin covered "Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You." Is another amazing track, far superior than
Well,
John
so
Baez.
Peter Green, this is one of the last songs he writes before Fleetwood Mac goes to hell with Stevie Nicks and all that crap. And it basically, he was in a real paranoid state of mind at the time, and if you listen to those lyrics, that's what it is. It's total paranoia and madness, oncoming madness. Number 8 is Sinner from Sin After Sin. And this is what I call one of their speeding down the highway songs. If you just the guitars are just this galloping guitar, makes me want to go jump in my car and hit the gas, man.
Yeah.
And the lyrics fit in with the kind of darkness of the name Judas Priest, it's kind of dark metal lyrics. Number 7 is Hellbent for Leather. This is what I call one of their Beavis and Butthead songs. Really fun songs to sing, and the lyrics it's just kind of funny when you sing it. Hellbent for leather. Fun song to sing along to. Great songwriting. Number 6 is Screaming for Vengeance off the album Screaming for Vengeance. In my opinion, and I know this is a typical kind of mainstream opinion, but Screaming for Vengeance is their best album. It's their masterpiece. It was all I could do not to make Riding on the Wind my 11th song, because I just squeezing in all these songs is so hard. And so I'll give a shout out to that song.
Very difficult to squeeze this down to 10 songs.
It's painful.
Yeah, I apologize.
No. What's great is I've known Snags so long. So far, some of the songs he's mentioned were songs I really thought about putting in mine. I'm like, you know what? Why do this and have him
Snags will put him on his. Yeah.
So I'm like, I like mentally made him pick. So far, I've made him pick these.
No, I'm just picking what irregardless of what anybody else picks. And I know their whole catalog up through Defenders of the Faith really well. I'm just picking, and that's the era. That's my era.
And those are great songs so far.
What I literally think are the best Judas Priest songs from that era. Number 4, You Got Another Thing Coming, also off of Screaming for Vengeance. Badass lyrics, fun to sing along with, killer riffage. I was screaming that in my car on the way to work today. It was great. So much fun. Number 3, Breaking the Law. This is their ultimate Beavis and Butthead song. It's a song about the down and out. I'm as Mr. Clean knows and Silky knows, I've got a history of being a big soccer fan, and I know I've read books about soccer hooligans. I was a soccer hooligan for a while, as much as you can be in the United States, and I have to think that them and the stories about riots at soccer games and those guys causing all that kind of madness over in the UK had something to do with inspiring this song. When you listen to the lyrics, it's describing those guys down to a T, and it's just freaking hilarious. And it's just a song that's been quoted on Beavis and Butthead, literally, and it's just so much fun to sing. There's at least 3 or 4 times in our multi-decade friendship where something happens and you and I would just Silky, we'd just break out singing this song spontaneously.
Yeah.
We won't say whatever it is we were doing when we were breaking the law, but
who knows?
So, yeah. Hellion Electric Eye, number 2, off of Screaming for Vengeance. This is an absolute masterpiece of metal songwriting.
Yeah.
Written in the early 80s, very accurately predicted the lack of privacy and the surveillance state that we would come to live in as time went by. I remember about a year ago, I forget what happened. I'm at work with some of my coworkers that are like in their 20s and early 30s, and something comes up. I forget what it was. We're talking about the security camera or something. I forget, but I started singing Electric Eye, and they're looking at me kind of confused. And I was like, "You don't know that song?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "Oh my God." We were shooting a video for something at work.
Right.
I said, "Let's stop shooting this video for a sec. I got it. You got to hear this song." I fired it up on my phone. It's a live version, and from the early '80s, and Priest is just killing it. The green laser beams are coming down around Rob Halford as he's singing, and I'm just going. I'm getting goosebumps. And I'm like, isn't this amazing? And they're just looking at me like crickets, dude. Like,
there's no hope for some people.
Any hope for the future of mankind?
No. This is the most underappreciated band ever, in my opinion. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. But those that know, they know.
Yeah, yeah. So Hellion Electric Eye is number 2. Number 1 is probably the most underappreciated and the best one, or probably in the top 1 or 2 metal songs of all time, and also right up there with being one of the most underappreciated, especially in the mainstream. Although those who know is fucking Dissident Aggressor. Number 1 Judas Priest tune.
That's a deep cut, my friend.
Well, Slayer covered it. People know it.
It's a great tune.
Off of Sin After Sin, it's just mind-blowing. It's even more of a masterpiece than the Hellion Electric Eye. The way the guitars and the vocals kick in at the beginning just shatters your soul every time you listen to it. Seems to be, the lyrics seem to be about living in East Berlin under totalitarian rule. You know, facing the impregnable wall. I know what I am. I'm Berlin.
Yeah.
Slayer covered it. It's a prototype for speed metal without a doubt. If you listen to that and think about the fact that it came out in 1977, that's crazy.
Oh yeah. There was a metal band out in California that would sing it as Amber Lynn, who was a so
that's hilarious.
Man, I haven't listened to Dissident Aggressor in like 2 hours.
Yeah, I know. It's a long. Such a good song. If you look that song up on YouTube, here's some of the comments underneath it. No words exist to describe how incredible this song is. It's the purest, most heavy metal song of all time. Blows my mind every time I hear this smoking sweet jam. That's all you got to know.
Yeah,
this is Aggressor. That's the number one.
I love your top 10 because those were the songs you're like, I gotta put, and it wasn't room for the ones you really wanted to, and I love that I said, no, you know what? Have faith. Snags is going to list every one of these.
I did.
And,
there you go.
So I love that there's no overlap so far.
Silky's going to have the deepest of the deep cuts.
We'll see. We'll see.
So his top 10 will be last. We'll yammer a little while more, and then
we got some overlap, me and Snags, but I got some nice gems that he doesn't have.
Good. So we kind of went up to those first. They're about to put out Rockarola. Gull Records owns the first 2 records. They have reissued those first 2 continuously with either Best of Judas Priest, Hero, the different album covers. They've done some to pull you in. They have these futuristic Frank Frazetta type album covers. And Priest has offered to buy them out in order to do like a special reissue project, but no dice. They have not. So that's why when I was lamenting earlier that, they've got some of these chestnuts buried in the rough, these diamonds in the rough, they could release, but I think Gull has,
See, that's what Glenn Tipton was yelling at you, because we know he's listening to this episode. When you were bitching about that earlier, whiny little bitch about that earlier.
So
Glenn Tipton was telling you, hey, man, we don't have the rights. Don't you know your shit?
So I do have I have a Judas Priest childhood story. I get a Sony Walkman one year. This has been like 81 or 82, and I've got a cassette of Stained Class, which is really one of my favorite Priest albums. And, you know, I have all of them, but Stained Class, and like Mr. Clean said, they're just so underrated. Most people think of Priest and they think of like 1980, 1982, or, you know, 84. But they're so I'm riding along on my bike and listening to Saints in Hell and just rocking out. And I just, the wheel turned, I hit a pothole, something ass over elbow off the bike. The tape comes out of the Walkman. Anyone who's ever fallen with that tape deck, the tape comes out, skids across the road. The door gets scuffed, you know, the whole deal. And these two girls are on the front porch of whoever's house it was. But Tina and Jackie bust out laughing. And I know I didn't have a chance with them. I was only like 10 or 11, but you're humiliated.
How old were Tina and Jackie?
They were my age, you know, 11, 12. You know, we were.
That's not why you didn't have a chance. You didn't have a chance because
they were bitches, but you know,
they were stuck up. It's not that you were losers; they were stuck up.
But it's just, you know, you fuck up that bad in front of them, and there's no coming back. You're like, okay, it's you didn't think you had a chance, but now you know you don't have a chance.
And you think about that contrast, speeding down the road on your bike, listening to Judas Priest, and how cool you must have felt.
The wind, yeah.
And then 10 seconds later, you're laid out, girls
staring up at the sky. Your headphones are all caterwonky, and you know, these cackling harpies, and I had to ride off in full view of them. It wasn't like you turn a corner and you're okay. I'm out of their eyes. I mean, there was nothing. It was just the open road on either side, and they could just watch me ride. You know, it was really humiliating, but a funny story. But I wanted to mention to you guys songs like "Take on the World" and "United," even "Heavy Duty" and "Defenders of the Faith." You know, to quote Saxon's denim and leather, they brought us all together. Songs of unity, the metal family. I can think of a few instances where just being a metalhead and being at a show or trying to get in somewhere, the metalheads really look out for each other. It's a different genre, you know, a different lifestyle, where some of these other genres of music, maybe it's because I'm not into it, I don't really see that same brotherhood that you know, see anywhere else. You know, Iron Maiden has a song called "Blood Brothers." Same type of song about just the power of everybody coming together. Again, I think a recurring theme in the metalheads that I know, they came from pretty rough childhoods, and they sought solace in music. Just that anger in the music kind of channeled them to a calmer demeanor. You know,
I always like the like "Living After Midnight." That was kind of a unity song. That's why just everybody. I mean, it's not my top 10. It was top 40 type Judas Priest, but it's a fun song, you know, and it's about everybody just partying, you know. It's like
it's a party tune.
Partying after midnight.
The funny thing about that song, "Living After Midnight," if you don't know, Halford's upstairs trying to sleep, and Tipton is ripping that riff over and over, and in a very stiff upper lip British kind of way, Halford comes down and says, "Oh, you're living after midnight," as a way to say, "Hey, shut the fuck up, I'm sleeping."
Yeah,
you know,
I'm trying to sleep.
But he said "living after midnight," and that's how that song came together. It's
interesting.
Kind of
That's
funny.
sweet. I never heard that.
Yeah. So a couple stories I wanted to relate about just the family, the metal kind of thing. There was a Sabbath reunion up in North Carolina, and Snags had done. We kind of told this story before.
Yeah, you've told this story on the podcast before, but for
Yeah.
those idiots who didn't listen to that episode
Yeah.
and missed it, we're gonna
So
tell it again.
we go up to this Sabbath reunion, and we're supposed to meet this guy up there because he says, "Oh, you can stay at my parents' house," and we go, "Oh yeah, okay," and then I
This
don't
is
see the
like the
guy.
first Sabbath reunion with Bill
Yeah,
Ward and everybody.
yeah,
What,
Bill Ward.
what year
Yeah,
would this have been? Like 99, 98 or
90,
something?
98, or well, I think that reunion album came out in 96, 97, so it was shortly after that. And
Ozfest or something.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we drive up there, and we're about halfway up, and me and the guy I'm with, we're like, how the hell are we going to find this guy? There's 20,000 kids there, you know? So we're like, son of a, we don't have money for a room. We're going up there, and I'm like, oh my God, I guess we're going to have a really bad night sleeping in this pickup truck, you know? But we get up there, and we're there for a couple hours. Pantera played, some other bands, and in between the bands, you walk around, we turn a corner, and there's the guy that we were supposed to run into. And we're like, dude, oh my God, and we're laughing, shaking hands, talking, hanging out. And then we go back to our seats, they go on, and we're like, damn it, but at least we knew we were there. So the show ends, and we walk out, and we're like, God, I hope we run into him again. So many people had left, and we run into them a third time, and we ended up going back, staying at his parents' house. We had each of us had a room. We get up the next morning. We got this huge drive back down to Atlanta, and the mom made pancakes and eggs, and the house was filled with all these kids that this guy had invited back from the show to crash out and not drive home drunk. So I thought that was cool. An example of just how they take care of you. I went and saw Iron Maiden over in West Palm Beach, and there was a guy there. There's a restaurant that Nico McBrain owns, and it's a ribs place called Rock and Ribs. And you go in there, it's packed. You got to sit down with other people, and you don't know them. And I'm sitting at this table with 4 other people. I assume they all know each other. And the one guy's there, and he's talking to us about how he's an entertainment lawyer, and he's got this box at the show, and he's getting rounds for everybody. We're sitting there drinking and eating, and he paid for the whole meal. We all tried to give him money. He's like, nah, I'm making a lot of money. Not to say you guys aren't, but this one's on me. And we all leave, and I kind of ran into him at the show. He's, dude, come, and I went and sat in the box seats that he had. So we had a box with an open bar, and he just took me in to watch the show. And another example of just how the metalheads just kind of look out for each other. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Cool.
But
do we have Mr. Clean drop his top 10 list?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Lay it on us.
Man, what an impossible task. So
Sophie's choice.
I think we should also, you talked about sharing your metal moment, but share your like Priest moment, because I didn't hear a lot of Priest, listening to the radio,
right,
and didn't have money to buy albums, didn't have knowledge, and it was probably my freshman year in college. Made friends with a guy named Mark Danner. He was out of Tennessee, and he was coming down to study mechanical engineering, and I was studying, beer drinking and smoking weed.
12-ounce curls.
Getting in bar fights too.
At Tech,
some of the stories I've heard.
And trying to get by with bar fights, and also, how it is. So, but Mark was a huge Priest metalhead and Iron Maiden metalhead, and introduced me, he was like, man, you got to listen. I'd heard the few songs, that were on the radio, around 1985, 80, 86. But I didn't know about Priest, because I just didn't play it. And I didn't know to buy their albums. And so he's like, man, check this shit out. And it was Sad Wings of Destiny and Sin After Sin and all the way up through like Screaming for Vengeance. And I was just like, and Defenders of the Faith, I think it just come out, and that's the concert we went to. And I was just like, holy crap, man. And I was like, I never heard of these guys before. Man, it's all we listen to. I mean, just over and over again. I'm not surprised, Brett, to find out, that your thoughts about Stay in Class, that's just incredible album. They're so tight. The guitar work in that album, I mean, is insane. And so this is an impossible task. I almost, as I told Craig earlier, it's like you got to do can we do this like top 10, like Wheel of Fortune style, where you get the RNSTL, like the standard, like Hellion.
Yeah.
You get another thing coming, you get the Victim of Changes, that's your like, you get that automatically.
Yeah.
And then you get your other 10. I mean, but
I really relied on Snags to hit the ones, and he did.
Yeah.
I feel so good about my top 10 now because he did mention the few that I was really torn about.
Yeah. But my top 10 is just like, it's kind of like the great movies. Like you turn on the TV and there's a movie on, like Shawshank Redemption or Goodfellas or something, and you can't,
Godfather.
You can't stop, watching it. Anywhere you pick up on it, you're like, oh God, I gotta. So I think about these songs like that. These are like the songs where you're like, man, this song makes me feel awesome.
Yeah.
So I have one off of Rockarola. These are in no top 10 order, like first favorite to least favorite. That's asking too much of me. But now Run of the Mill off of Rockarola.
Fucking great.
It's just a really grooving song. It's the guitar work is so warm, man. You can feel the strings vibrating on that first album. I mean, it's just really intense, especially listening on vinyl, which we were listening on records, back then. And Run of the Mill is just a really, it's not a very positive song. It's kind of depressing song, but man, it's just really, really grooving. It's got cool guitar work. I like all the songs off of Rockarola. I like all of them. But if I had to pick one off of that album, it's Run of the Mill. I mean, off of the next album, Sad Wings of Destiny is impossible to not like any song, that's on that whole album. It's definitely, the Victim of Changes is a song that when I heard that the first time, my buddy, said, listen to this song, on Sad Wings of Destiny. I was like, what? Who's been keeping this shit from me? I was like, indignant, like, huh?
What the shit?
What the hell's going on, man? Why didn't
the kids out there understand you didn't have these streaming services that recommend other bands based on bands you like. It wasn't as easy to discover the music. If it's not on the radio or some friend of yours isn't making you listen to the album.
Yeah, well, it's like when I discovered the Scorpions in like There's No One Like You in 1982. And then realize, holy shit, who, how do they have all these other albums? It was crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
They 8 other albums before the one you found. You'd never heard of them.
Yeah. The same guy, Mark from Tennessee, he introduced me to all that old Scorpions, the old Iron Maiden. I had never heard the first Iron Maiden album before.
Wow. Yeah.
They didn't play that on, Atlanta radio. They played Leonard Skinner, AC/DC, the standard stuff,
They play Flight of Icarus, I think, is the first time they got on 96 Rock.
They played that, but I went to that, I went to the first Iron Maiden after I found out about them. I went to the first concert of my kids.
Peace of Mind tour. We were both at that one. Quiet Riot opened, and they played ZZ Top's Tush at the end as an encore. Both bands come on stage, and it was a fun show.
In the Power Slave tour, I was at there at the Omni again for that one. So I got Run of the Mill, Victim of Changes. Number 3 Craig, we got some crossover here, man, but I can't not have the center, but I'm gonna have the center live off of Unleashed in the
There you
East.
go.
There you go.
The guitar, when they go into the guitar solo part of that, when they're just like screeching on it makes your hair stand on
Oh,
end.
it's
I mean,
phenomenal.
it literally, like, my back of the hairs on the back of my neck will stand up when they get into that just intense, like the guitar jamming. And that song is is totally incredible. Also, live off of that album in my top 10 is Exciter. That song has got so much high energy. I mean,
that opening riff is just sick.
The studio version of that I had about 14 songs before I whittled it down, and that was one of them. Yeah.
The vocals on Exciter, and the lyrics are awesome, and then the vocals are just, incredible on that song. I mean, everything on that song is awesome. The guitar work. I tried to get something from different albums, but I got two off of Stained Class. It's really hard not to like the title track. Stained Class is such a damn good song. They are so tight on that song. The guitar work. I mean, it's just grooves, man. You can't stop listening to that song when it's on. Just really, really dig Stained Class, the title track off of, maybe my favorite Priest album. So I like the next song a lot, Grinder.
Nice.
So off of British Steel.
Apparently he's looking for meat.
Looking for meat.
Yeah, and something to eat.
It's just the whole British Steel album is awesome. It's
the interesting thing about British Steel is it is like the first true heavy metal album where there's no blues. There are no blues chords anywhere in that record. And Scott Ian from Anthrax points that out. And I had never really thought about that. But if you look at how Deep Purple and Black Sabbath and even Led Zeppelin, they were all blues based with that heavy vibe going. But and I would never praise something that was not from a blues base. I think that's where most music comes from, but it is brilliant how British Steel is just exactly that. It's those foundries.
That Grinder, it's just pumping, man. It just is high energy. It's not too fast. I mean, it's just right. And it's my favorite song off of British Steel.
That's a jam.
Did you see British Steel tour when they came and did the whole first half of the show? British Steel?
In 2009, I believe.
Yeah,
they actually came down to Fort Myers, and nobody comes down here. So I was a drunken fool at that show. But
we were the fourth row. Me and my buddy John Hall. Man, it was insane. This chick came from way back in the seats and came up and just slid right in front of me. This really hot chick, and just started like crying her ass and in front of me, and I was like, man, this is awesome. And then the security guard came down and got her and took her back up. Dude. And then like about 5 minutes later, she's back down, slides right in front of me, man. And it's on again.
That's fantastic.
It was that was a really good concert.
And now he pays child support, but go ahead.
So
Silky,
Craig and I think we still got two more. We got crossover on, so I'm probably gonna give away. I like Green Manalishi a lot.
Great tune.
I really like the live album. I actually think Unleashed in the East is the best live album like ever recorded. I really think it's incredible.
Yeah. What's amazing about that is they recorded that, and then they bring the tapes back to where John Lennon's house. The video of Imagine, they're in that room, and Halford nails in one take each song, sings over his vocals. And they've made the perfect live record, but it's still live. You can't, there's no criticism.
Most of these live albums have overdubs of some kind of one. The other
it's still awesome.
It's amazing.
The other classic signature metal song that was recorded in that room in John Lennon's house is the original version of Mob Rules.
Oh yeah.
That Sabbath did with Dio. There's two versions. There's one they recorded for the heavy metal soundtrack, and then they recorded it again when they made the Mob Rules album. That original first version was recorded at John Lennon's house.
That's crazy.
So,
So next on my list, rather after Green Manalishi, was the I like Desert Plains off the Point of Entry album. It's another just
I like that album. It's underrated.
Song. It's kind of a, you don't, most people don't ever listen to to that album itself. It's awesome, man. It's got some really cool songs on it. Some cool, like if you're like happened to be high back then when you were a teenager, they got some really cool sound effects on some of the songs, and it's bouncing back and forth, left and right on the stereo. And
I felt
put those just light up a doobie, put those headphones on, lean back, and
Point of Entry.
I
put Point of Entry right next to Presence by Zeppelin. As far as here are some albums with they weren't like hits. They just came out and were part of the whole picture, and the other albums had the hits, and those were just the next album. But I'm always drawn to, like, you've heard Freebird and Simple Man. I want to hear I Ain't the One.
Yep.
I want to hear Mississippi Kid, and I want to hear the deeper
Call Me the Breeze. I like
Call Me the Breeze, yeah.
That's another cover that's arguably better than the original.
Mm-hmm.
There's some best piano work at the end of that song, man. Call Me the Breeze. That's insane.
Billy Powell.
Piano. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, second to last on my list, Craig, we shared this one, but it's impossible for me not to say Screaming for Vengeance. I mean, it's so powerful. It's hands down in my book, the scream at the end, where he's like, scream, it is, he nails that scream.
Oh my God.
And he does it live too. You see it from that Texas Jam concert where they're out there, and he's scream at the end, and it's just like you can see like all the veins popping out in his head. That's like the best freaking scream, in any rock song.
It's got to be. I mean, him and Dio. I mean, you could say Ripper Owens too, but Ripper Owens doesn't have the catalog that he and Dio have.
Yeah.
Him and Dio have got to be neck and neck for the top metal singers of all time.
And Bruce Dickinson, I really, the three of them were going to do the tenors, the three tenors, they were going to do a metal album of based off of that Pavarotti and the other two guys. They were going to do an album, and it was
Dio and Halford and Dickinson.
Yeah, and it was all gonna come together, and Halford was all about it. And I think the lawyers kind of fucked around, and then Dio died. And so there is a version that did come out, Jeff Tate and two other people. But
you've got the second tier of those guys with amazing voices, Jeff Tate from Queensryche and Ripper Owens, but they don't have the catalog.
Yeah, it's just not.
They don't have the songs. They got the voices though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, last in the top 10 is from the Sin After Sin album. There's a song called Raw Deal.
Nice.
It's just so tight. The guitar work in that album, or that song rather, is so cool, and solos are cool, and it's got cool effects. I mean, it's just nothing else sound like that. That song, I can't name another band that make a song that sounded like that song, Raw Deal. I mean, this is an impossible task. I mean, how can you leave out like Free Will Burning, Painkiller? Painkiller is one of the best freaking Judas Priest songs like ever.
It's sick.
Genocide, Tyrant, Dreamer, Deceiver, some of those mellow where Rob Halford uses about 10 different sounds of his voice in one song.
I literally got my top 10 completed right before we started recording because I was just struggling with it, marathon and Judas Priest all week, and I had 14, 15 songs, and I was just like, I can't cut any of these songs, and
No, yeah.
I forced myself to do it right before the podcast.
I had like 22. I had 22 songs, and then brilliantly said, dude, Snags is probably going to have all of the bigger hits. So just, and I forced myself to cut those off. And then I had 12, and I was like, oh, you know, but I managed to get it down to 10. But,
Mr. Clean's right, though. It's painful. It's hard.
It is. Yeah, it was
cut out the.
Yeah, it was tough.
I would throw one more thing out, Craig. You probably haven't heard it, but if you listen to the that last album, Firepower, and listen to the song on there called Flamethrower. It's just a freaking badass song, man. It just kicks, man, and it's like you're like, man, these dudes have been in this band for 45 years,
album,
man.
When it came out in 2018, I listened to it because you and Silky were both, you gotta hear this freaking album, and so because of you two, I did listen to it, but I don't remember it. I'm sure. Yeah. I remember thinking, now this album's pretty damn good, but I don't.
Well, I tell you, if you make a playlist with all that stuff and just on random, they all come in good. I mean, I would definitely limit what's on Turbo to come on, or
Turbo was kind of their.
It's just so overplayed. Ram It Down has some good moments, and you know, but
I just remember hearing "I'm Your Turbo Lover," and I was like, I'm not buying that one.
Ram It Down has got a few songs, man, but it was kind of like, come on, guys, we got.
Yeah, I think they realized they'd really hit bottom with Turbo, and then Ram It Down was they're trying to get back over to just the solid metal type thing, but they were dealing with a lot of just to go into KK Downing's book. KK felt like he'd lost control of the band way early and had some resentments, and him and Glenn Tipton would argue. And the thing is, we just mentioned a bunch of Priest songs throughout the show, and those songs they had the right guitar riff. They had the riff that made the song. The lyrics made the riff. However you want to say it, those were the right song. That was the right music for that song. Lyrics built around those riffs, and those made those songs. And I would tell KK, you should be proud. You played on every one of those. So you should be fucking proud. Not, well, they didn't use my guitar riff there, and I thought this was good. And, you know, Glenn Tipton is amazing. So, you know what? I'll tell you a story. I went to a listening
for KK, party. Who we know is listening.
Yes. I went to a listening party that Skynyrd had in Atlanta when I worked at Tower Records. And we went to this thing. It was called.
This is not the real Leonard Skinner. This is
no. But
brother.
Gary Rosington was there, and he was auctioning off, or they did a raffle for the Skynyrd box set. But the reason everyone was there, it was called Skynyrd's Friends, I think, and it was a bunch of country artists doing Lynyrd Skynyrd songs. A pretty awful record if you don't like new country, is pretty bad. But anyway, we're there, and we're at this pool hall right off of Peachtree, right near the Fox Theater and all that, just down from there. And we're there. It's a pool hall, and here's Gary Rosington sitting with his people drinking. And we're there early, and it hasn't started yet, the listening party. And I just go over and said, hey, Gary, you want to play pool? And he's like, yeah. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh, shit. So he lets me break, and I sink a ball on the break. So I keep going. I run the table, and I scratch on the 8-ball. But I played the greatest game of pool I'd ever played in my life. I've never done that since. And he looks at me, he says, you almost got me, kid. And he proceeds to run the table and win the game. But my point after all that was, you have to be the dumbest person in the room. You do better when you're playing somebody that's better than you, or you have to. So I would say KK's guitar playing, he had to be put to his in that uncomfortable zone of like really being creative with a partner like Glenn Tipton, who just made it look easy, and I think I would say Glenn brought out the best in KK Downing. But you read his book and he just bitches the whole time that his
You said
ideas.
I didn't read the Stone Alone Bill Wyman book, but you said
Oh
that was
God,
pretty much the same
that's
thing.
another one. Yeah,
Him
Bill
just
Wyman bitching the
whining
whole
and
time.
bitching,
Meanwhile, he's touring all around the world,
getting
millions
laid
of
by
groupies.
like hundreds of groupies.
Well, Bill Wyman was the first, like, he fucked everything that moved. He'd walk
Yeah.
in and the fish would stop swimming.
Yeah.
I think
But,
one
and,
of
then,
KK's
and he's retired comfortably with millions of dollars, and now I'm going to write a book and complain about it all.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think one of KK Downing's beefs is probably like every time there's a live video of them in concert, it's like 10 seconds of Glenn Tipton solo and playing guitar, and then like about a half a second KK. He's just ugly as hell. They don't want to put him on video.
That's funny. You mentioned that, and you always see Joe Perry and very little
KK,
Brad Whitford. You see very little of Brad Whitford, and Whitford's playing half those solos,
Yeah.
But I don't hear Brad Whitford bitching. He's laughing all the way to the bank all day,
He's probably coked out of his mind too, but
that's the problem, man. Judas Priest didn't get to laugh all the way to the bank.
No,
they the Angel, I think, wasn't it Angel of Retribution was like their first top 10 album in the US.
That album is one of the greatest records they did. It is just note for note, no wasted track on it. That is an incredible record.
Didn't when KK first left Judas Priest, he tried to start a bed and breakfast? Like
he funded a golf course. He started a hot sauce after the drummer from Aerosmith. I just told Joey Kramer had hot sauce, and so if I'm correct, Joe Perry does too. But
KK, it was like KK couldn't just retire; he had to try to do some kind of business or something.
Yeah, and he does this. Golf course, and you know how people are kind of serious about golf, and there were all kind of design problems and issues. There was like a union thing with the landscapers, and just it stuck in the mire. He was constantly fighting that. But wanted to mention Heavy Metal Parking Lot. Two guys in May of '86. They go down to in Landover, Maryland. Priest and Dokken were touring, and they go down and literally just turn on camera. This is something that Snags and Silky would have done back in the day, had they thought of it. But they go down. They didn't have tickets. They weren't even into Judas Priest. They go down to this parking lot and they just film all the, all the tailgaters before the concert.
I first saw this movie at a film festival in like 2004 or something. Wow. And it's hilarious.
It really is. It's on Amazon Prime. So I meant to see if it still is, but the last I saw, it is on Amazon Prime. But Heavy Metal Parking Lot, correct. It's about an hour long, and it is just it's a time capsule. You go back, and
you got the mullets, you got the
it's all of it. It's you go back and you were there. You're one of those kids. It's hilarious.
You got the freak boots.
And what's funny to me is there's one kid that really is blitzed out in these zebra skin pattern uh, stretch pants, and total looks like a metal dude. And they managed to track that kid down. He's living with his mother, bald, doesn't even listen to metal anymore. He's like all embarrassed coming to the door, but they get him to come out, and they're like, "Hey, we did heavy metal parking lot, and you were the kid in the," and he's just like, I don't even listen to metal. I listen to country, and I was like, oh my god, get him back in the house, shut the door, you know. Um,
Just for
Shame.
everybody's information, Heavy Metal Parking Lot right now is on Amazon Prime. You can rent it. It's 16 minutes long. You can rent it for 99 cents. We'll throw the link on the click
okay,
pit.
but it's about an hour. I don't know. Maybe they've. Are you
I don't
sure
know.
it's 16 minutes long? That's not right.
That's what it
I've
says
seen it.
here.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, anyway,
I'll look it up on YouTube, see if there's a different version.
yeah,
But the one on
it's
Amazon is 16 minutes
it's
long.
just funny how some people, you don't turn your back on where you were from. We all, as we grow, we get into other things, but you come back to, like, I
Oh,
just have a constant rotation of things I like, and I go all the way back to stuff I liked at 10, 11 years old. And now,
there's a
granted, there's some stuff I refuse to listen to that I liked then, but these people that go, oh, I don't, or I'm walking through the grocery store with my screaming for vengeance shirt on or something, and some guy goes, dude, I used to listen to, I'm like, fuck, I got nothing
I was
for you.
walking through the grocery store with my Iron Maiden Killer shirt on, and this dude about my age, he goes, "Oh man, that's awesome! I have that shirt too." And then he goes, "Except mine is from 1981." I was like, "Fuck you!" Hey, so
I love it.
the full length half hour version of Heavy Metal Parking Lot is on YouTube, and we will link that version from the Click Pit, so you won't have to
Okay.
pay and you get the full version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Sounds
mentioned that. I did want to also mention Dream Deceivers is another documentary. This is incredible. It's so on December 23rd of 1985, Ray Belknap and James Vance had a suicide pact, and they were listening to Judas Priest constantly out in the Bible Belt, Midwest somewhere. They decide to have a suicide pact. And on December 23rd of 1985, just happens to be my father's birthday, by the way, they take a shotgun, and Ray Belknap was successful in killing himself. James Vance severely disfigures his whole face, looked like somebody's butt. And 1990, there was a civil action. Vance's parents filed against Judas Priest. So Dream Deceivers is this really good documentary about that entire thing.
And they were when they died, weren't they listening to Beyond the Realms of Death?
Well, possibly, but they're what
It was better by you, better than
better by
me.
you, better than
Okay.
me
All right,
is
all right.
what Vance's parents, they and
Got it.
They were
that
saying it
wasn't
said
even
do
their
it.
song. It was a Spooky Tooth tune.
Yeah.
And what's funny, Bill Hicks, the comedian, he pointed out in relation to this case the absurdity of the notion that a successful band would wish to kill off their purchasing fan base.
It just economically, it doesn't make sense.
No.
Yeah,
They
not at
made
all.
they made
But
Rob Halford sing in court.
yeah,
He had to sing up there on the stand.
Yeah, it was really that an outcrop of the whole what was the movement of all the since Tipper Gore started?
yeah, the PMRC.
PMRC.
Yeah,
There was a
that
lot of
that had come
hysteria
out
in
in
the 80s.
85 too. at 14, it was like I'm watching this thing with Judas Priest, Ozzy, a kid killed himself in Suicide Solution, got
Yeah,
him
yeah.
in a bunch of shit. And, this dysfunctional history of families across the nation, I felt we were given metal so as not to destroy the earth. Bands like Sabbath, Ozzy, Maiden, Scorpions, Van Halen, AC/DC, Priest, Rush, Kiss, Accept, UFO, Saxon. They saved our lives. They were not just bands. I have stressed that in other rants about music. These bands were more than just bands. They were our morning, noon, and night, man. It was our entire existence. And so any affront, any attack was an attack on you and me and our buddy. And it was like, fuck you, bring it.
Yeah, the whole PMRC thing was ridiculous, and the two of the people who really led the resistance to that were, oddly enough, because you wouldn't mention them in the same sentence in any other context, was Dee Snider and Frank Zappa.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. But we mentioned the Dream Deceivers is a really good documentary if you want to check that out.
It's free on YouTube. We'll link it in the click bit.
Awesome. And that's really good. So in 98, Halford outs himself on MTV. And what's funny is I think most of us already knew, either subconsciously or just knew, and it didn't matter.
There's a reference to it in Heavy Metal Parking Lot. One of the dudes is talking about Judas Priest. He's describing all the members, and he's like, "Yeah, Glenn Tip is cool as shit." And he's like, "And Rob Halford's got a killer voice, and I don't really know about him very much." And he makes a little comment like that, So it was kind of in the people kind of, and now when you listen to their songs, some of those lyrics take on a totally different.
Oh yeah, I think it's in Raw Deal. He makes he makes a mention to the Island of Fire or Fire Island or something like that. It was a gay bar.
Fire Island.
Yeah, and but at the time, he strolls into the bar and says, "Give me a bourbon," and that's in.
He's checking out all the dudes.
Yeah, and it's just in a way it's funny to us at the time. We were too young. To me, all those Priest albums from Rock-a-Rolla on was the guitar, the back and forth, and this just shredding vocals. It was just incredible, and just like Mr. Clean describing some of these songs in his top 10, Halford just veins out, just raging, and that's what you fell in love with that band. So if he's gay or worships trees or what, it doesn't fucking matter. And again, that's that heavy metal thing. We were like, I think he was terrified and the band was a little afraid that him coming out might hurt the band. And I guess the way he came out was his decision. Now, if he had been caught with some kid or something, that would have just destroyed, I think, because they certainly
that's the Dave Holland story.
They did not. They didn't give Dave Holland any. Dave Holland dies in Spain. He took his wealth and bought some secluded house in Spain and lived out his years in Spain away from everyone. And Priest pretty much distanced themselves from him.
And for those who don't know, we should tell that story. But first of all, so did Halford come out when he was still in Priest or after he left?
No, he had left. He was doing the 2 album with
Fight
John 5, he did Fight and then did the 2 album with John 5, which was real experimental, metal, techno, not what do you call it? Kind of like 9 Inch Nails. too.
Goth? Was there I've never heard it as a guy like goth kind of thing too?
It's just like industrial metal.
Mm.
That
You
Fight
know.
album is good as shit, though.
Yeah, the Fight album is tremendous. That's a great. There's four. Fight did 4 albums, and that was great. The 2 album is just kind of an experimental thing, and I think Halford was really
I
trying to
gotta make a
find.
Fight playlist.
Halford was trying to find a footing, and I think he just kind of went and did that. And he's on MTV being interviewed, and somebody asked a question, and it was the right time. He just said what he said and realized oh my God, I've just let this out. And he felt relief. And I think when I heard that he'd outed himself, I was like, well, who didn't know that? Like it didn't shatter your world, because Painkiller is still a fucking awesome song,
Yeah. And all the band knew. They knew like
Oh yeah,
about 30 minutes after they met him.
yeah.
I remember
Go back and watch the old Gray Whistle where they're doing some of those songs, and he's wearing his sister's blouse and shit. It's like
Scarves and shit like
yeah,
that.
dude, what are you doing?
covering who originally did Diamonds and Rust? Joan Baez.
Joan Baez.
Yeah. Joan Baez. I remember seeing an interview around that time when Ripper Owens was in the band and Halford had just come out, and they're asking about it. What do you think about Halford coming out as gay? And Glenn Tipton just yawned. That was his answer to the question.
Well, what's weird is there was an email, and they're all British, and there's Halford describes it in Confess, his autobiography. There was an email, and he had been wanting to maybe do a solo project, or just he was trying to get sober, and he just had all these repressed emotions over the last 15 years. And this email comes, and they didn't respond right away, or when they did, he had moved. So there was just this huge miscommunication, and suddenly he's out of the band. And the other guys, instead of going, what? They're like, oh, well, okay. And then Halford's like, well, God, you're not even going to come and ask me why or what, And so the next 4 or 5, however long he was out of the band, they just didn't talk. And it was all, like, I remember trying to figure out why the fuck Halford was out of the band. It didn't make any sense. And then obviously, you had Bruce Dickinson leaving Maiden on a completely. I was already over them, but Vince Neil leaving Crew. I was like, what the fuck is happening?
There was one thing that was happening though during this period was grunge. And grunge was making this whole genre look really uncool. I remember one time
hairspray and bullshit. Yeah,
you and me in the early '90s were hanging out with some friends, and we met some friends of yours somewhere. We all pile into my car to go somewhere. I turn on the ignition, and it's right in the middle of like a Judas Priest or an Iron Maiden song. So the music comes on, and it's just like twin lead guitars, and they just started laughing. It was like really not cool music at the time. And so part of
you and I were at that Mexican restaurant across or just up from where Peaches used to be, El Azteca.
Uh-huh.
And we walk in, and I had a Killer shirt on, and some dude in a Izod's like, dude, you're wearing an Iron Maiden shirt, and I was just like, fuck you.
What people don't know, like now all this music is accepted, but there was a period during the grunge early 90s, people were shedding and distancing themselves from the whole 80s metal thing. And so that's part of why I think these bands were kind of falling apart a little bit.
Possibly.
Their success is going down the tubes. The lead singers want to try out something different. In the case of Motley Crue, it was the band that wanted to try out something different, and Vince Neil wasn't with it. But these people were doubting themselves. They weren't really sure of their musical styles anymore, and that's why you got Rob Halford doing a techno album.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say techno. It's not dancey. It's just kind of a left field thing.
Skinny puppy, industrial kind of
It's
stuff.
industrial.
Yeah.
It's 9 Inch Nails or Fates, not Fates Warning, but one of
Chamber.
Cold. Yeah. So Halford did 4 albums, 2 live albums, a best of, and then there's a box set of the 4 albums, and he even did a Christmas album. Hilarious. Yep. But those Halford albums, he did 2 songs that I sent you links for. Hell's Last Survivor is really his response to being kicked out of Priest. And then there's another song called Sad Wings. And Mr. Clean, if you don't know those 2 songs,
he does, I guarantee you.
Do you know those 2 songs?
No, I don't.
You don't know the Halford stuff?
Those 2 songs particularly.
Well, yeah, those 2 songs were they were Japanese bonus tracks for that Revival album. Or his first, the second solo record, and it was reissued. It had those 2 tracks, and they were bonus tracks, and they're like the best thing. How they're phenomenal. Check those out tonight. Hell's Last Survivor and Sad Wings. I put them in
making notes.
Yeah.
Is the Halford albums that group Halford? Are they
great?
Are they
those
good?
Are great. They're
making
great.
a Halford playlist real quick.
Yeah.
Except for the Christmas album, I think.
Yeah, I don't think you'll dig that, Snags, but
I'll put that one on my Christmas. I've got a punk metal hip hop Christmas list. I'll add that
with your Twisted Sister, but
yeah,
because it's him and family, so it's like his nephew's in there with it's just a weird.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's odd.
It's already in my punk metal.
You already have it. See?
I gave you that. I cooked you up with the Halford Christmas album, Craig.
Nice.
You probably did. Oh, so yeah, I've been known to rave about the Twisted Sister Christmas album. I think it's their best album, so that's probably why Mr. Clean.
So just remember that Hell's Last Survivor and Sad Wings.
Yep.
Just epic tunes, and you listen to the pain and his rage. It's just so amazing when something bad can happen and you can actually channel it right, and it come out to be a kick-ass tune. But so Confess his autobiography. Then Biblical is like all facets of hard rock history, memories, anecdotes regarding every element of rock and roll work and lifestyles, from tours to tattoos, riffs to riders. He goes into people's riders or what they want backstage and stuff. It's pretty funny. And then Drugs to Devil Horns. So those 2 books are just really good, well written. And what I'm most impressed with, he just talks about Priest and him, through the 70s and 80s. Tipton and Downing, they're all, chasing after the groupies, and Halford would end up back in his room pounding alcohol and doing drugs because he didn't have that outlet. He just felt so alone. And so as you read it that way, you're like, God, man, this guy finds somebody. And then he keeps hooking up with straight guys that pretend to be gay because they're that much of a fan, which is a whole other, like, what the fuck? I can't imagine trying to, buddy up to Rob Halford as a fan and making him think that I'm attracted to him in that way. It's bizarre.
Didn't you say you had a friend that was had backstage passes for a Priest concert, and Rob Halford, this is before he came out, he's like paying him a lot of attention, sitting down, talking to him. And the guy didn't realize what was going on. And until later on, he's thinking about it. He's like, was he flirting with me?
Yeah. Somebody at Northside, I can't remember. At the time, I do remember that story. But
I remember you telling me that.
So Glenn Tipton, he had some solo albums, Baptism of Fire, Edge of the World, that had John Entwistle and Cozy Powell playing on that with him. And those are interesting. The good riffage. Tipton's just a great guitar player. But he retires in February of 2018 with Parkinson's. He's still kind of in the band.
He runs the band.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the boss. He's the Malcolm Young of that band.
He's the Brian Wilson.
Even though he's not, now he's the Brian Wilson. He's the absentee leader. Yeah.
I will say Glenn Tipton nailed Lita Ford per her book, Living Like a Runaway. They ran into each other on tour, and he was hitting that for a while.
According to that book, at least what you've told me, she hooked up with everybody pretty much.
Yeah, she did it her way, and God love her.
Rock star, man.
Yeah. God love her.
Eddie Van Halen, Nikki Sixx, Richie Blackmore.
Yeah. So that's all my notes that I have.
Well, you got to drop. You got to drop.
I know after the fact, I'm like, son of a bitch, I didn't tell that story, but we've really covered everything. I want to definitely. Real quick. So the touring stories in Halford's book, Confess. There's a couple I wanted to share. One good one was Glenn had this massive turkey sandwich, and it had gone bad, or he didn't want it. They're riding along in the early days in their van, and he slings this huge sandwich out the window, and it just explodes on the back of this big ugly biker's neck. This just turkey deli meat just laid on this dude's neck, and they're all 19, 20. They're terrified. This van goes trying to speed off, and this biker just chases after him and is whipping the front of the van, dented the van or something. That made me think of just shit Snags and I did in high school. We'd always famously flip somebody off, and then you're at a red light.
Yeah, and you wouldn't run the fucking red light. I was like, dude, go.
Oh, yeah. No, I had a car beside me, and I was just thinking, fuck, I can't get over. And then unbeknownst to me, this dude opens my door.
There was no getting over. We were at the intersection, and there was a red light, and there was nothing in front of you.
No, that's how I was driving. I would have, trust me.
All right.
Anyway, so another was a long road trip. Everyone's crammed in among the gear and seats, trying to sleep. And Halford, in an attempt to not have them stop and make the trip even longer, he proceeds to try to discreetly shit in this bag. And then he's going to throw the bag out the van. And the entire van fills with that rancid stench.
Of course.
Just horrific. But a lot of great stories. His stories leaned far more with being lonely, like I related. And then, but it's mostly G-rated. He does talk about falling in love several times, like I said. But he does get in a decent relationship with a guy who's in the ex-military and everything. And as they go along, it just becomes more and more dysfunctional. He'll leave, come back. They're getting deeper and deeper into cocaine and all these drugs. And so they get in a big fight, and he leaves, about his drug use. And the guy shoots himself in the head. And
that's a wholesome, that's a decent.
Yeah, well, I mean, it solidified. Halford believed, had that not happened, that he more than likely would have gotten back into drugs and tried to kill himself, because he had tried several times as well. And this really, just at that point, he knew, I can't do these drugs anymore. And so he's been sober all the way back mid 80s, I think. 87, he was sober on that live Priest album. He's sober there.
There you go. We got to hear your top 10 list, man.
Yeah. I just want, the last thing was KK Priest. He's got 2 albums. They're decent albums with Ripper Owens. singing, good Priest style metal. They do a sequel to the Sentinel, which is one of my favorite Priest songs, and it's a slower song, and it's about the death of the Sentinel, and that sucks in my opinion. Like, why would you do that to all the Priest fans? I think it was a jab.
It was so hard to keep Sentinel out of my top 10.
Yeah,
I mean, you fuck KK, man.
Yeah.
Ugly. He killed off the Sentinel.
Yeah,
That ain't
yeah.
right.
On that one of those that first solo album, it's called Sermons of the Sinner. Really good album, and then that song, and I'm like, you what? It just really pissed me off. So anyway, and he's a bitch for quitting the band. So
I thought he got driven out by KK and the and Glenn and the manager.
So KK, yeah, we didn't discuss him leaving. He fires off this email with like 22 reasons that he's going to leave the band, and they were just like, "Are you?" They were kind of blindsided right before the tour. They're about to go on their Epitaph tour, and now they get Richie Faulkner, and he kind of saves the day. And a lot of big shoes to fill, but he does it. And then he's got the balls to be like, I can't believe they didn't ask me back in the band when Tipton is like, and I love Priest is just like, dude, fuck you. They did let him come up on the Hall of Fame thing, which is, big of them, but hey, don't get comfortable. It's just a couple songs and you're the fuck out.
Get out of here.
Yeah. But so my top 10, and I'm just I started with I looked at the first album and just picked what I liked. And I got all the way, to where I was like, fuck, I got 22 songs, So I took Cheater off of Rock-a-Rolla. And these are in no order, but I just made 10. I'm not doing what Snags did. Cheater, Rock-a-Roll, great tune, and I did hear that My Sharona riff.
Yeah, I was texting Snags when I was marathoning Judas Priest. I was like, if you listen to Rock-a-Rolla, there's a riff in there. It's basically
that the Knack stole.
My Sharona, it's in there.
Yeah, it's funny that I never would have. So forever that's ruined now. Thanks.
Yeah.
You got Cheater and Rock-a-Rolla, the two songs.
No, Cheater from. I was just saying what
Rock-a-Rolla.
Cheater.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, it's Cheater is the song.
I do like.
That's a badass song, man.
And they put that with Winter and Winter's.
Yeah, it's like a medley of three songs. Yeah.
So, but I wanted to just say Cheater, but I don't.
When you hear My Sharona, you're listening to Cheater.
I don't think there's a way to just hear Cheater as a track.
No, there isn't.
There's some of if you have the first run of that record or something, but the first three
albums do that. They got songs,
run them all together.
Got to go together. You got to have Dreamer, Deceiver, and Deceiver. You got to have Epitaph, and
that was kind of
Genocide or Tyrant or whatever. Islands of Domination.
Kind of a result of the kind of art rock, psychedelic and art rock thing. These long epics string all these.
So then the Ripper off of Sad Wings, and I think, like I was saying earlier, Rock-a-Rolla was it's what they were at the time. It's like somebody takes a bad photograph. That's how they looked in that moment. You can't. I like that album. There was an article about a really well. He dropped enough knowledge later in the article that you're like, okay, I see what this guy's saying. He was a Priest fan, but he says Rock-a-Rolla is one of the worst first albums by, and I'm like, dude, there's nothing. It's better than half the shit in 1974, personally.
It's a great album.
I like it. I like it a lot.
The first lyrics. I mean, what is it? What would you do without? What would you have without?
Where would you be without
Where
music?
Would you be without music? You'd be nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
that song is great.
Awesome.
Yeah, and Run of the Mill, great one. But so the Ripper off of Sad Wings of Destiny, I feel it was like a step up. They really jumped in, like Snags had said earlier. They came into their own, and you could, they were still kind of branching off here and there, but they'd found their hook.
The Ripper was one of my top 15. I had to shave off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a tough one, but the only problem with the Ripper is I wish it was like 3 minutes longer somehow.
Yes,
man.
yeah, a good jam back and forth with the guitar would have been cool.
Yeah,
And then Starbreaker off Sin After Sin. I love that song. There's a live version that's on Live and Rare. It was a collection put out in the early 80s that if you look for Priest Live and Rare, there's a live version of Starbreaker on there that's really good. The one thing about Priest throughout was these intros to a lot of their songs, these sound effects, and then it would build and then start the song. It was a recurring theme that is just you couldn't wait to hear what Tipton was going to do next, And that's another reason I just KK shut the fuck up,
Yeah, I like at the end of Starbreaker, I would always try to, because as they fade this song out, where he keeps screaming Starbreaker.
Yeah,
it's like, how far can I hear him? He just keeps stretching it out and stretching it out.
It's like a Randy Rhoads song where as it's fading, you're turning the volume up to hear all the, the noodling.
It's pretty cool.
So after Starbreaker, Beyond the Realms of Death from Stained Class, these first four are like one from each of the albums. Sin After Sin has so many good tunes, and I love that you guys really hit some of the songs I needed to. I struggled with, but I'm glad I didn't. It would have been boring if we all chose the same 10 songs. So Beyond the Realms of Death is just an incredible tune. I love the album covers from Rock-a-Rolla with the Coca-Cola nod. Sad Wings of Destiny is just this beautiful album cover you could stare at for hours. I years later, never realized that trident or whatever is in the lava that the angel's looking down at.
Yep.
That it was there all that time. And somebody pointed that out one time. I'm like, holy, now I can't not see it, but I never noticed that.
I got both Rock-a-Rolla albums, the Coca-Cola one and the one with that crazy looking freaking creature on there dropping a bomb with the wing and just all the
is that Hero? Is that the same cover?
No, Hero is different. That's like a dude striding with a shield and a
okay,
like a Viking.
Yeah, he's coming towards you. Yeah, I know which one.
The other Rock-a-Rolla was a purple.
Yeah, he's got the wings and the bomb
and a bomb hanging down. I mean, it's just crazy artwork.
Yeah, and that was Gull's thing of put out some crazy album cover, and these Priest fans won't know the difference. They'll buy up another copy of the same two albums. That's what Priest was bitching about.
Mm-hmm.
So Stained Class had just that great weird mannequin with the light pole through its head. I love. You're not quite sure what's going on there, but it's
looking like an arrow going through its head.
Yeah, just wicked. I would just stare at these album covers when you played the record. And then Delivering the Goods from Killing Machine, possibly the first Priest song I ever heard. I've always liked that whip and then the guitar opening up, like you're skidding off to the side. I just love that. And
he's also really puts his soul into the singing and delivered the goods.
Yeah.
Every lyric in there, he's hitting it, man. That's great. That was one of my top 15. That was so hard to trim off. I mean, I was like, oh God.
And
it's been like an earworm in my head all week, delivering the goods. I can't get it out of my freaking head.
I wanted to call this episode Delivering the Goods.
We're going to call it Dissident Aggressor.
Yeah, that's a great one. Killing Machine is probably my go-to early Priest record before 1980. I always liked that one. And then Take on the World, another song from Killing Machine. I've always loved the percussion in that and just the almost sing song, get the whole crowd involved kind of thing. Very poppy. That should have been like, more radio friendly than it was. Maybe it was. But I always like that tune. That's really me at 9, 10 years old, discovering Priest, those two songs, Delivering the Goods to Take on the World. So that's the first 6. Then Metal Gods, I think it's just an epic tune. I love the story of them with trays of silverware in this small kitchen at John Lennon's house, slamming the trays down with all the silverware to mimic these metal gods marching forward. That was the sound effect. And then
guitar solo on Metal Gods is just crunching, man. It's just bad stuff right there.
Wicked. And then number 8 was Jawbreaker off of Defenders of the Faith.
Fucking love Jawbreaker.
Just say deadly as the viper. Just stops you. I had a hard time with that and Eat Me Alive. I think those two were just epic tunes off of Defenders of the Faith, but I went with Jawbreaker. And then back to Stained Class for Saints in Hell. I've always loved that song. And, I told you that story about wiping out on my bike, but I just always loved that tune. And then I jumped over Turbo and Ram It Down and went with Hell Rider off of Angel of Retribution. That song is just so epic. That whole Angel of Retribution album is, it was tough to only pick the one.
It's a good album.
There's a song in there called Eulogy, which is a real short tune, but it's just this somber, like there's a piano in it, and there's like a little bit where they just do the piano. And at the time I was going through, my life was in such disarray, and that song would be
Just
on
after the Terminator took off.
Oh yeah. I would zone out, and that album was in my player, and I would kind of zone out, and I always seemed to kind of come back in, realizing I'm parked and staring off into the abyss with this piano going, and it always kind of solidified how I felt. So Eulogy was a tough one not to put on here, but it's just such a softer song. You do a top 10 representing Priest, you're not going to do that. Here Come the Tears would have been another cool one. I think that was Halford's almost suicide note through the 70s. He was really struggling.
Here Come the Tears is like one of those songs, like also like Last Rose of Summer. Like when I'll be trying to convince people to listen to Judas Priest, I'll be like, hey, listen, you want to hear some Judas Priest? They'd be like, oh no, I don't want to hear no heavy metal. And so then I would play like Last Rose of Summer, and they'd be like, oh, who was that?
I would play Before the Dawn to people.
Before the Dawn.
Yeah.
People like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's singer's great. Yeah, it's Judas Priest.
Tell the Foghat story, Silky. You remember the Foghat story when you were working at Tower? I'll tell it if you don't remember it.
You tell it.
So there's a period there in the mid to late 90s where you and I really got into Foghat.
Bad. We fell down a rabbit hole.
Hardcore, and so you're at work with all these 90s hipsters.
Oh God, yeah.
Trying to preach the gospel of Foghat. And those of you that don't understand, go back and listen to our Foghat episode and you'll get a clue. But so Silky's at work at Tower Records, working with all these trendy motherfuckers, and he's trying to get through some dude's head. You gotta listen to Foghat, man. They're amazing. And most people, when they hear the word Foghat, that they act like somebody just farted.
Yeah.
They think of like some redneck, scrungy road band
like
from
Snyder on One Day at a Time or something.
Yeah. And basically just Slow Ride and Fool for the City, and that's it. And a bunch of greasy idiots. But if you listen to those first handful of Foghat albums from the 70s, they're phenomenal. The guitar playing is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so Silky puts one of those albums on the CD player at Tower without telling anybody.
Oh yeah.
And then he walks back up to the guy about an hour later and goes, "Man, this is smoking, man." The guy's like, "Yeah, the guitar playing is amazing. Who is this?" And he goes, "It's Foghat, you dumbass motherfucker."
Yeah.
But
I believe that was the Full for the City record, or possibly maybe Night Shift. I don't remember now.
It's really hard to get through to people when they've got a preconception about some of these bands.
Yeah.
If you dive deep. And I remember talking to a coworker about Motorhead, and it's a guy who loves music, really intelligent, really into music, and I'm like, if you gave Motorhead a chance, the lyrics and the music are just amazing.
Yeah.
There's some amazing stuff, and it's just like, oh yeah. It's like, that's stupid people music. And it's like, okay.
So we made a playlist called "Delivering the Goods." And it's just a mad run through all the Priest albums. We even did.
By we mean Silky made a playlist.
Yeah, I did. But I when the show's over, we're about to wrap it up. I'd like to get the other 10 and add a top 30, our top 10s in a separate playlist on there.
The playlist, I'm opening the playlist that
I think that'd be fun. Yeah.
You made a playlist that's 7 hours long, and it's called Beyond the Realms of Death, not Delivery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so we'll post that one on the Click Pit along with those movies we talked about, and
the two. I sent you the links for the Halford songs because those are just amazing. Sadly, they're not. You're going to have a hard time finding the CD that because they were Japanese bonus tracks.
Oh, these are out of print Halford songs.
You'd have to find the one that has those. I got to
scroll way back up in my text to find them. All right, we'll link those two out of print Halford songs as well, just because they're out of print.
I think we should have closing statements.
All right.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Clean.
Yeah, hip us to it.
Man, I just like I tried to say a minute ago, you try to proselytize and turn people on, to Judas Priest, and seems sometimes like you couldn't get anywhere. I'm really happy to see that suddenly there's like a huge resurgence and they're so popular right now, and everybody's talking about Rob, and he's all over the place, and I'm happy for them getting some acknowledgement. But man, I think it's the most underrated freaking band like ever. In my opinion, they're in my top like 2 or 3 bands like ever. I have every single album they came out with. I think Rob Halford's the best male vocalist of any rock band ever. I think he's better than Freddie Mercury. I think he's better than Robert Plant or anybody else, even Bruce Dickinson. I don't think it's even close. His range, his different sounds he can make with his voice. I always appreciated like really good vocalists, and you combine that with that kind of twin guitar metal. I mean,
you can't.
Just they didn't copy. Sure they have a few cover songs, but they weren't really copying anybody. They were their own.
They made the cover songs better.
Yeah, they would do a better cover song. So I just would like to say, man, this is it enhanced my life having Judas Priest, in my car, in my truck, in every vehicle I've ever owned since I could drive. Priest was there in every vehicle I have ever owned, just rocking the speakers till they rattled.
That's beautiful.
Now close with that.
That's beautiful. I would echo that. I have bought the Priest catalog multiple times. That 50 years of heavy metal box set came out. I had to get that, and it literally has everything. One of these days I'll have the space and the time to put some of these posters framed. That box set came with some really cool posters. And then there's also Rufus Publishing does these high-end coffee table books, and they did I sent Snags a link for that book as well. It's like a must-have for a Priest fan. It's a little pricey, but it's a thick, hardbound coffee table book that's just filled with pictures and posters and backstage passes, and there is some text, but it's just so cool. And it's basically you send everybody off to school and work, and maybe you got the day off, and you go and you sit at the table with nothing around you, and you get that book out and you just sit and gaze through, and it's just
You'll have to send that to me again, and I'll put it on
okay.
the list, but
Yeah.
I can't find it. I was just looking forward to my
Yeah,
text.
I made sure I think I emailed that to you. Check that.
I'll check, but
I'm pretty sure I emailed that for that reason.
I don't have it. I probably just deleted it, not knowing that
that's
you
great.
wanted me to link it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Sometimes I've got important shit to do.
So like you said, Priest just Halford is just ridiculous. His range. He also was asked to sing when Dio refused to do those shows, and
right.
Yeah, he's done shows with Black Sabbath,
and that was incredible. Like I don't know too many people be able to just do that. He also covers Dio's "Man on the Silver Mountain" on a Dio tribute, and you don't realize how amazing Dio's voice is until you hear someone else try to cover him, and you realize, holy shit, even Rob Halford struggles to really hit the same tone or whatever that Dio had.
On that note, I have to mention there's a bunch of Van Halen Club Days songs on YouTube. Silky at one point downloaded them all and put them on MP3, and you hear it's a whole nother Van Halen catalog from them when they were playing clubs, and they're all cover songs. It's them covering a range of bands from Budgie to Kiss to Rainbow, and you've got David Lee Roth trying to sing Dio, Man on Silver Mountain. He kind of, he shucks and jives his way through it, as Dave can do. It's passable, but you talk about someone trying to cover that song, and at that on the opposite end of the spectrum, singing wise, I just had to throw that out there. It's pretty interesting if you can find it.
All right, so I'm looking at the email. I sent you that 50 Heavy Metal Years of Music box set where people can see that.
Right, I'll look at my trash folder. I think that's probably where
You're going to see an email from me at 10 a.m. and at 11:15.
I found it.
Both 50, of those.
Why? Oh, the box set and the book. I got to put them both on the ClickPit.
Yeah, because those are. And the book is really cool, Mr. Clean. You can see the unveiling of that. You'll dig the shit out of that. And you can probably find it on eBay or directly from. I think the way I got it was a little more cheddar, but
I don't have any kids, so I can buy it.
Yeah. See, I got too much going on. I have to really watch what I drop. But yeah, that's a great, and there's a great Dio Years Black Sabbath, that same company. They got a bunch of books. Pricey, but anyway. So that's my closing thing. Priest is amazing. So much history, so much a part of that metal thing. All those bands just really kept us alive. And you look back on your early years, 81, 82, 83, 12, 13 years old, just coming of age, discovering girls, discovering getting out on your own. And Priest was always there. You always knew there would be a new Priest album or a new Maiden album. It just kept us alive.
Praise Lemmy.
Reasons to camp out.
Praise Lemmy.
Yeah, reasons
for tickets.
Yeah, camping out for tickets. Yep.
Anyway,
so my closing statement is just that you are the two biggest Judas Priest fans that I know, and separately have heard for years you guys raving about this band, and to get you both on this podcast, yapping about this band at the same time. It's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. This was a good run.
Yeah.
I dropped my kid off at 8:00 and I sat down and just put the playlist on and was looking at notes and
You mean 8 a.m. So
8 a.m.
You've been prepping for 12 hours. We recorded this at 8 p.m. at night. So
I looked up and it was 1:30 and I'm like, Jesus, I gotta stop. And I even texted you, I gotta stop.
No,
And,
for you cats out there that don't know, old Silky is off. When are we recording this, on a Wednesday? Well, Silky is off on Wednesday. So
Right.
I'm at work, really busy trying to get shit done, and I keep getting barraged with all these texts and emails about Judas Priest all day. That's why half of that shit was deleted. I didn't realize it was related to the episode.
We go back
another box set that Silky wants me to check out.
I used to have to get up at 4 a.m. and this fucker calls me at 2 a.m. telling me he figured out how to play Love Gun on his acoustic guitar.
I remember that.
Ready to fucking come through the phone and choke him out. But
I've only listened to Judas Priest, or I've listened to Judas Priest only for the last 2 weeks.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing else. That's why I got that delivering the goods like ear thing going on.
Yeah.
I can't get it. Like, I wake up in the morning feeling like we're ready to kick tonight, and I'm like, holy shit, stop, that's enough. I can't get it out of my head.
Yeah.
Makes you feel good.
So good. All right, man.
That's Judas Priest, everybody.
Deuces. Hang tight for the closing there.
Mr. Clean, stay on after we end the recording just for a little wrap up. All you cats out there, we got more shit coming up. Peace out. Keep it real.
Deuces.